So early last year we completed an expedition to circumnavigate the planet Microtech on Dragonflies. It was a pretty big project in terms of time and a lot of distance to cover on a hoverbike. It also allowed us to see some amazing sights and places we would never have been otherwise. Well, we've talked about doing another of these for a very long time, and about 8 months ago I even put out a really short video exploring the feasibility of Hurston as a candidate planet. But now we are finally in the planning phases of actually doing it. With that in mind, I was heading out to test the water, so to speak, on some of the terrain immediately outside Lorville. If the terrain isn't even traversable, I figured then there would be no point in putting in planning to any other aspects of Hurston. We learned a lot on our Microtech Expedition, and a lot of it were problems that arose due to lack of planning before we began. This time we would make sure that the planning was comprehensive. And so on a windy Lorville morning, I was all set to ride a route nearby and really get a sense of the terrain and the different biomes that we'd be up against. There have been a lot of changes to Hurston recently, from the addition of rivers to the changing of the clouds in the atmosphere, and patch to patch, gravel bikes seem to yo-yo between incredibly reliable and absolute death traps. Escaping Lorville itself would be the first challenge. The city gates have been made considerably more complex since the redesign of Lorville. The environment here is also littered with obstacles. I quickly discover that the bike bottoming out after jumps is still a major problem. This is a problem because it damages the gravlevs of the bike. Over hundreds of kilometers, it does add up. It had been a while since riding over difficult terrain, so I take things slowly to try and avoid undue damage. The further from the city I made it, the clearer the terrain was becoming in the second biome, Red Desert. But at the edge of Lorville on this side was our third biome of the day, trash piles. These are kind of the equivalent of forests on Microtech. They are traversable, but you have to pick your way through, so they do slow you down considerably. Riding up and over can work just as well as going around, and thankfully this section of trash was only small. Once on the other side, things really opened up. With a little luck, a lot of our main travel route will be fast terrain like this. I'd be finding out soon if that was a realistic hope or not, but on the edge of these strip mine terraces, I was able to get a look back at Lorville before heading into the wilds around it. Right out of the gate, we'd see some real examples of just how much of a problem those little construction site poles can be, as I found myself surrounded by them for a few kilometers. They either don't render in until close, or are just not easily visible, but hitting one would be very damaging, and at high speed most likely fatal. Next, more of the giant trash panels. These are slow going, sure, but they are traversable, sometimes reducing progress to the likes of running through a maze rather than a straight line. The biggest concern noted on this trial one was the bottoming out of the bike after jumps. This damages the gravlevs under the bike, causing lower and lower hover height. It is like a feedback loop. With the exception of dig-ins at the front of the bike which damage your retro thrusters, you could call them your brakes. The bottoming out is the worst kind of non-fatal damage you face, covering hundreds of kilometers on a Dragonfly. But pretty soon the terrain opened up into classic Hurston Red Desert, and this is ground that can be covered at pretty high speed safely. I'd keep testing the recovery from jumps as I went because I was really hoping some of the bottoming out had been fluke or just bad circumstances, but unfortunately it was still pretty consistent. Over the flat ground, I think we can make up good time, but we'll just have to avoid jumps. Even relatively minor jumps are bottoming out the bike. I did a distance check after around 80 kilometers and also did a bike check. This involves looking over the components for damage with a gravlev lost and a 50% damage to a retro thruster already. And also checking the hull integrity, which I was pretty sure we could repair on the fly. As I move, I'm looking ahead for threats and using the ping because it travels outwards in a wave, highlighting upcoming features as it travels. This kind of highlights a path view in a way that for me at least makes it clearer where to move next. Now, I hadn't brought along any tools with me, but Fingers was about to join my channel so we could get some tools together to test repairing in the field.
What do you need?
I need a multi-tool and one of those repair canisters and the repair attachment on Hurston. I'm quite close to Lorville. I'm about 100 kilometers from Lorville.
I have just logged into your server in a bed log over Hurston.
Fingers is just the best.
Damn, on it.
Send us party invite, widgets.
Party invite is coming now. I would estimate changing bikes every 200 kilometers. The test run was about 150 kilometers in total and proved that the terrain is traversable. Using the salvage tool, we figured it would be possible to repair the bike's hull. This would hopefully prevent deaths by making the bike less likely to explode, but even if the repair functionality did work in this context, which we had not tested yet, the bikes would still likely need to be very often swapped. This is because there is no way to replace gravlevs or retro thrusters. Even if you can keep the bike from exploding, those components are going to wear down, and based on this pretty conservative test run, they are going to wear down quite quickly.
Shit.
What's wrong?
Where are my canisters? Damn it.
I mean, the good news is I guess we can pretty much get those anywhere. Fingers had misplaced the salvage canisters and we needed them to try the repairing mechanic, so we'd be making a trip back to Lorville to grab some.
Squirrely.
This won't fit all the way, like I think we'll need to leave the door open.
Which means a slow boat to Evers.
Yeah, pretty much. Well, Everest or Lorville. After returning to Lorville and collecting what we needed, we'd be loading up into a different ship altogether. We had ambitions to test refueling as well, but we wouldn't end up getting to that particular point on this outing. Yeah, that was good. Okay, I'm off.
Made it down.
In order to use salvage material to repair the bike, we'd first need to actually salvage some material, and for this we'd use the Starfarer. Try that. When I highlighted the damage section of the bike, it said no repairs were needed, and so at first I thought this might not work. Repairs not needed. But when I jumped on the bike to check its status, the front wing was now green again. Have you got a repair tool on you right now?
No.
Okay. Fingers would check the status live in our next test.
Right now it's a power triangle.
Okay. There's a little menu button in the top corner. And you hit that and you go to self status. I'll show the bike.
Yep.
Okay, good.
All green.
Okay.
Yeah, left forward pontoon is red.
Okay. Okay, there we go.
Shields. Done.
Is it still red?
It is green. Still green.
we switch to the repair tool now, it'll say repairs not needed. So if I...
Green. It's affected green.
Okay, cool. Wow, okay, that's so cool. So it does work, it just, it behaves in a very odd way. There were other new features to test as well. Huh, they just pull off anyway, okay. But what about the components inside? I don't think you can get to them. You can see them, but geometry's in the way, I think. The acid desert terrain lay ahead, and I wanted to create some organic damage for us to attempt repairing. This terrain is interesting because there's rocks everywhere, and I don't know which ones are pass over and which ones you can't. And I guess we're gonna find out probably with an explosion. But hopefully, if we make it to those hills, do a jump, probably bottom out on the jump, and then that'll probably cause some damage that we can go repairing. Okay, got a jump going. Yep, we can bottom out. Let's find out how bad that was. Didn't feel too bad, but I'm still green. The weather and colour here reminded me of some of the storms that we encountered in the green biomes of Microtech. Between the weather and the lighting, it's pinged like this. Reminds me of some of those afternoon sessions on Microtech where storm was coming in, but the visibility was getting bad, you're just using pings constantly.
Except it's brown and white or red.
Well, there were some days where it was brown on Microtech here when we hit those the green areas, you know, the storms there, they were real brown. Terrain's pretty decent, yeah. But bottoming out on top of an object like a rock is always going to be really bad for you and the bike, and this landing would be exactly that. Ooh, okay, ooh! That bottoming out was too much. Too much for the bike.
It blew up.
What we needed now was a route. We knew that we wanted a polar route this time around in order to hit more of Hurston's biomes. And thankfully there are a much wider range of navigation tools available online than during our previous trip. We'd create a map of our own by mixing those of Murphy Exploration Group with the Hurston terrain overlay of Verse Guide, and despite some initial uncertainty, a route started to come together. So the reason I'm trying to keep the lines vertical is because the southbound line is very vertical, but the southbound line could be amended from Hendricks to Hadley, because Hadley is a mining outpost and Tamar is not. I'll draw it now. So it's
okay, I see it.
There, instead of here, instead of that line, we could justify from Rufus coming up further to the east, and then making up the angle by heading over to Cletus.
Ah.
So there's some logic to it, or we can claim there's some logic to it.
Yeah, I mean the Rufus Breckenridge line is cleaner. It parallels the line we take out, which means to me we're still being true, you know?
Yeah. This is the one where it's got to come down and around the lake.
Yeah.
More or less that way. That, I think.
Ishmael? Yeah, Ishmael.
I didn't mark Ishmael. Okay. Oh, Ishmael. Perfect. Oh my god. That's even better. I didn't realise there was another one up there. That's great. Because that means there is another stop. I thought that was going to be like I thought that was going to be the equivalent of that leg on Microtech where there was just nothing. So this is our intended route with the different legs colour coded. Total distance is about 7,500 kilometers, which is about 500 more than the Microtech trip. And I honestly don't know if this is going to be harder or easier than Microtech. What we need next is to build up our support crew. I have 2 other riders joining me on bikes, who we will meet next video, along with patrons wishing to take part at various stages of the journey. I have Fingers leading the support pilots and navigation team, and Pericles as another pilot. We're going to be looking for players to record aboard the support ships to give us extra video, and a couple more pilots to really give us good coverage. The plan is also to complete this over a much shorter time than Microtech, where we spaced out the legs by a couple of weeks. This time we're going for as close to a continuous run as is feasible. How will it all come together? Join us next time to find out. As always, I want to thank all of you at home for watching, and all of our amazing patrons who you can see on screen right now. Without our very generous patrons, none of the videos would be possible, because patron support is what allows me to commit the time to editing these videos together, and I am very grateful to all of you for that help. And in this video, I would especially like to thank Fingers, funnily enough, who recently became a patron. Thank you very much, Fingers, and we'll be seeing a lot more of you, I have no doubt, as this journey continues. We'll be back with more from Circumnavigating Hurston very soon.